Hello! In this video we are going to build the new tweet component from Twitter. We will be using HTML and CSS. This is a time lapse of the project. If you want to follow along, please stay tuned. Let's get started by adding a reference image. You can find the reference image in the references folder called reference.png, and this image we need to resize this to a height of I think about 200 pixels should work. And now we can start building this component. So first I'm going to add all the basic HTML elements we need. I'm not going to style them immediately. We will style all the elements after I've added them. So we can start with a div, and that'll just be our wrapper component. And then I'll create the image on the left, and that is in assets, profile picture I think it's called. Just update this for consistency. And there we go. So that image is too big, of course. Let's resize this to width of I think 50 pixels will be fine. Yeah, let's do 50 pixels. Then I'm gonna do a form on the right hand side to contain all the elements on the right or to the right, and this will contain the text box and all the buttons. So let's start with the text area, and we can add a placeholder for that to say what's happening. Next we have a button, and this is the permission button on your tweet. And after that we need a horizontal line or horizontal rule, and then we need 6 buttons. I'll just add numbers as placeholders for now. And then we need so next to the 6 buttons to the right, the first element we have is the character count indicator. So as you type on Twitter, that counter changes, or the circle gets filled in the more you type. For this demo, we can just hard code that to be an image for now, and that's also in assets, and I think that is character count.png. That's too big as well, so I'm just gonna hard code these tiles for this first part of the video. I think this one needs to be 40 pixels. Maybe make it 24. Yeah, that's better. And then on the reference image we have a little spacer between the character count and the button next to it. So I'm just going to do a div with a pipe character for now. We will update this a bit later. And then we have another button. And then we have our last button, which is the tweet button. Now that we have all our elements on the page, we can start creating CSS classes. So what can we call this component? We can call this compose tweet container, and we can copy that. You can add a style at the top. So for this video, I'm just going to do styles inside the HTML page. You're welcome to create a separate style sheet and link to it in this page. So we can, for this, we need to do display flex, and the flex direction is going to be row. The default is row, but I like to be explicit to type it out. And now our profile picture is squashed, so let's fix that. Compose tweet profile picture, and we need to set a explicit width and height on this. I think we had 50 pixels. Yep, we can do the height as well. It's 50 pixels. And we can copy the CSS class and remove the style and update it down here. We can just move it to the front. There's no reason it can be at the back as well. I just like to be consistent. All our elements will have the classes first. Okay, so now our profile icon or our profile image is the correct size. So the profile image that I provided, the profile pic, was saved with rounded. The image already has a rounded corners, so it looks like a circle. If you want to use a different image, which is square, so I have a square example here. So there you'll see the profile image is now square. You can add a border radius of 50%, and that will make your image round or circular. Our image is already round, so I'll just update it to use the round image, but there's a quick tip if you want to use your own profile picture, which might not be round or circular. Next, we can move on to the form, and we can call this compose tweet form. And you are welcome to name your classes something else. And so currently all the HTML elements are they're just doing the default of the HTML or the default styles that are applied. So the text area I assume is doing block or inline, probably block, and then the button might be inline block because the button is on the same line. And then we have the horizontal line, and then we have all the buttons after that. But we want to be able to control this a bit better, so we can do display flex, and for this, the flex direction is going to be column because we want them to stack on top of each other, or at least some of the components we want to stack on top of each other. But now all our components are stacked on top of each other, but don't worry, we'll fix that in a couple of minutes. So the first thing that's visibly wrong is, or that changed is, other than the items being stacked, is our separator, the horizontal rule, now seems to just be a little dot in the center. So we can add another class, compose tweet form. We can call this line, we can call it separator, and we need to set the width on this 100%. 100%. So the element that gets this CSS class, the width will be the 100% of its parent container. There we go. So now we have the border running all the way from the left to the right. But these buttons now are all stacked, and we don't want them stacked, we want them next to each other like in the image below. So what we can do is we can create another wrapper component. So we can take all of those. So I cut that with Control X. We can do another div, and we can call this compose tweet forum footer, because that is the footer. And we can add all those buttons back in there. And now they're side by side again, but not in a predictable manner. So we will have to add some more styling on that. So let's do that. So we can do compose tweet form footer class, and we can add display flex on this again. And we'll do row for this, so they'll be nicely stacked next to each other. And what's next? Okay, so let's start adding. So currently the width of this component is just, it's defaulting to the width of all the elements inside so let's set this width also to 100%. Nothing happened. And I think we also need to do picture tweet form. Let's move this down to the tweet form. There we go. So that's going 100%. So that's occupying 100%, but I think we are also giving, let's see, we can probably accomplish the same thing with flex grow, because tweet form is inside of compose tweet container, and we also have the profile picture. Let's see. So giving the flex grow has the same effect. So in this instance, we can leave it as flex grow. So we can do justify content, and then we can do space between, and then the element should shift over like that. But we don't want this large space between the buttons. We just want this little incremental spaces, and then one large space over here, and then again controlled spaces over here. So what we'll need to do is we'll have to wrap all of these. We can wrap all of these in another component. And we can call this compose tweet form actions. And we need to wrap this one as well, all these elements in a div. And we can call this compose tweet form primary actions. And we need to add, just add this. Display flex direction row. And so currently we don't have anything in here. Compose tweet form actions, and let's add some spacing between the elements. 12 pixels should be good. So nothing's happening because I added the margin on the wrapper itself. What we need to do is So any element that is inside will now get the margin, but we don't want to add it on the very last item, so we can do not last child. Great. So if we go into let me find, so you'll see the orange on the right hand side is the margin, and the last element 6 doesn't have any margin. So next we can, what can we do next? Okay, let's add some spacing between the primary actions as well. So now we have the spacing there between those. So I think that looks more or less the basic structure we need. I think we can move on now for it to add some more styling to make it look more like the reference image at the bottom. So let's go back to the profile picture. So on the reference image, you'll see the profile picture has some spacing between the profile picture and the actual elements on the right hand side. So we can add some margin onto this. Let's see if 12 pixels works here as well. We can add a bit more. Maybe 24. Let's double it. Let's start with that. Next we can move on to I want to customize the text box. You don't have any borders and you have a bit of more of a default height. Currently we don't have a CSS class on the text area, so let's add one. Compose tweets form text box, and again you can call this, if you can think of a better name or a different name which is easier for you to understand or remember, you can do that. So first we'll remove the border, so don't want any border, and next we will set a min height on this. Let's see, maybe 60 pixels. Let's double that again. I think that's too high. Let's do 100. Okay, I think that's a good starting point. And for now, let's leave that as it. One more thing we can do is we can remove the resize handle here at the bottom. So in the bottom right corner, you'll see this little 3 lines. Almost looks like a little triangle. And you can remove that by using the resize, setting the resize. If I can't spell, and to none. And now you can't resize it anymore. You can customize this if you want. If you only want somebody to be able to change it vertically, and then you can do it up and down, or horizontally. And now you can only adjust the width. So there you can see I adjusted the width on it. But for this example, we don't want anybody to change the width of it or the height, so we'll just keep it at that. Next thing is we want to add some spacing between the text box and the button below it. If the text box loses focus, you can't see that there's a spacing. You can't see that there's no spacing issue. But as soon as you focus, the border touches, or the outline touches the button below it. So to get that right, we can add margin bottom. So this will always ensure that there's margin, at least this much margin below the text box, and 12 pixels. And now if I focus that element, you can see that there's now spacing in between. So let's move on to the everyone can reply button, and that is down here. So that also doesn't have a class. Let's add one. Compose tweet form button. And I find it good practice and easy to follow if you order the class names in the order they appear in the DOM. For this small example, it's probably okay if you don't do it, but it's easy to understand the hierarchy of the page if the class names follow the hierarchy of what they actually are ordered in the DOM. That's why I'm doing it like that. So first thing that we can do here is, you'll notice that the text on the button is centered aligned, but on our reference image at the bottom, it's left aligned. So we can text align left, and then your text is on the left. What can we do next? We can also we can remove the border on this, so we don't have a border anymore, and we can set the background to none, so we don't have a background anymore. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so we still have the outline, which is fine. We want an outline so the user knows what is focused with the keyboard. And there is also a little icon next to it, so let's add the icon. So there's multiple ways you can accomplish an icon inside of a button. I'm going to show you one way, and then I will maybe show you the other way as well. Well, let's just start with this one first. So we can add a background to this, and I'm going to use the shorthand syntax. So it's assets, and then I think it's what did I call this? Earth. Oh yeah, icon earth. Okay, so let's save that. And by default, it repeats all the way on how large your button is or your element is. And we can control that to add no repeat. Then it won't repeat. And that is the equivalent of saying background repeat and setting it over here. I'm just using the shorthand at the top. And we can set the size. Let's set the background size. I think it's 24 pixels by 24 pixels. That's too big. What we can do is we can also, instead of setting explicit pixel values, we can say contain, and then the browser will resize your image and contain it inside. It'll always be inside your element. So that, I think that works for this example. But you'll notice that the text is now overlapping with the icon. How can we ensure that there's always enough space to the left for the text to not overlap the icon? There is a property we can use. So you might be thinking margin. That's a good guess. But if we use margin, we are going to move the entire button. So now we move the button itself. So now there's margin over here pushing the button to the right. In this instance, we don't want margin, we want padding. So we'll go back to where it was and just find my cursor. It moved the text over. But 12 is not enough. Let's do 24. And I think 24 is good for now. And we can also update this the width of this element to max content. I think that should then resize it to always only be the size of the maximum content of it and not the entire width of this component. Okay, slowly but surely this component is starting to look like the reference image at the bottom. Let's move on to the buttons below. Oh wait, let's do the line first. So I think the line needs some more spacing between the permission button and the line itself. So we can add on so we can update that on, where did we, form line. Where is form line? There we go. So the permission button actually needs to be above this one. That's why I couldn't find it. And as far as I know, the horizontal rule or horizontal line element uses margin for the spacing. So there's default margin on it. It's the orange that you can see on the screen, hopefully. And we can update that to be the spacing that we want. So let me just close DevTools and top 12 pixels. Let's see if that helps. Yeah, it moved it down a bit. Let's do, I think 24 might be too large, too much. Might be 20 or 16. Let's do 16, no, not 26, 16. Okay, let's do 16, and then we can do margin bottom 16 as well. 16 pixels. There we go. Now we can move on to the buttons below. So we have the form footer and we have the form actions. So let's add the first button class, compose tweet form action. And we can call this media. So this is when you want to upload an image or attach an image or a video to your tweet. And let's add that over here. So first we need to set the background image, and we already set the background image above or previously. So if you want to try that yourself, pause the video and see if you can do that. Assets, and this one is called media.png, and again we don't want it to repeat. Let's save that, and now we can't see the icon because the size is not set. Background, can you remember what we need to set? It's background size, and it is contain. Oops, I made a typo. Background size, there we go. But we can't actually see it because we still have that one text inside of it. And now we have a different problem. The element is collapsed because the button is sized based on the content. We didn't set explicit width or height on the button. So let's update. So let's add a width and height to that button. Which button was it? It was this one. But all these buttons are the same size, so we'll probably end up repeating a lot of CSS code unnecessarily. So we already have a class over here, or a CSS selector, to set the margin on all of them except the last child. But in this instance, we want to set it on all elements. And So let's set the width. If I can type correctly, I think this was 24 pixels. And the height as well to 24 pixels. Compose tweet form media. Oh, I copied the wrong CSS class name. There we go. And the reason this is happening is because the others still have text in it, so I think it might be adding some extra sizing to it. So yes, as soon as we remove it, it should be fine. And we also need to remove the border. There we go. So that's working as expected. And let's move on to the next one, which is the GIF. If you say GIF, you are wrong. No, I'm just joking. You can say GIF if you really want to. And GIF, see, now I'm already saying GIF. And we need to use the class, add the class to the actual element at the bottom, otherwise it's not going to do anything. And we still have the number in there as well. So now we have the second button, GIF. So let's do the next one. So the next button is the poll button. So you can run a poll on Twitter if you want to ask questions, get people's opinions. The fourth one is our trusty emojis. If you want to tell the world about your feelings or how you're feeling at the moment, you can use emojis. I enjoy using emojis, so I'm a big fan of those. And then we have the next button, which is, oops, I think this is the schedule. I might be spelling that wrong. Let's see. Same spelling, so if the spelling is incorrect there, it might be incorrect there, but who cares, right? You know what I mean. Calendar, schedule, and then the last one is the geolocation. So your location, and no, it's not geo for Hollow Knight. If you've played Hollow Knight, geo refers to the coins, if I remember correctly. But in this instance, it refers to your location. So you can share your location. There we go. Okay, so those buttons, they look a bit fuzzy, but that's just because I'm zoomed in. So I zoom out, they look fine. And these are PNGs, they're not SVGs. If you export them as SVGs, they will be crisp, they won't be fuzzy. So let's move on to the buttons on the right. So first we have the character count. So I'm going to remove the inline styling, and I'm going to add a CSS clause for this one. Compose tweet form, character count. And that'll be 24 pixels as well, and the height will also be 24 pixels. I think on Twitter actually this is larger than the buttons, but it's fine. For this example, we can just keep them as 24. And the next item is the spacer. So initially I just added a pipe character, but we can do better than that. We can create a element. So we can have a separate element like we do here. Just going to call it line. You can call it, I'm just going to add this primary actions. Line. You can call it space or divider if you want. Primary actions, I'm going to add it over here, and the width on this will just be 1 pixel, and the height will be 24 pixels. And we need to set, so we can either set the background color or the border on it. I'm not opposed to or pro one or pro the other. And then we also need to remove the pipe itself. So that's one way of doing it, have an explicit element there. The second way you can do it is you can add on the image, on this image over here, you can add a border right to the right, and you'll have the same effect. So I can show you how that works as well. So character count is over here. So we can do border right 1 pixel solid, that's the style, and we want to just for now make it black. So let's comment that out for now, and we'll see there's a line over there, but there's one problem. That line is right next to the image, and that's not what we want. We also need to comment this out because I think this is taking space. Yeah, so we need to create space between the border and the actual image itself. So we can add padding to the right of maybe 12 pixels, let's see. And see, now we have the same effect with one element. So the border to the right. So I can inspect this and show you. So see, we have a div, and the green part is the padding that I just added, and the orange part is the margin, which is coming from this over here. So we can do that. So I like this solution, so let's go with that one. You can go with the solution you see better or see fit. I always go for the least amount of DOM elements you can, especially for like lines and stuff like that. If you can add it on the actual element itself or an existing element, repurpose that element to do that, I don't see why not. And next is the button to the right of the separator, which is the additional tweet button. Compose, tweet, form, primary. We don't have to call it like all of that. We can just say compose, tweet, form, additional tweet button, right? And this one will also be, the width on this one is also the same as all the other, which is 24 pixels. Height is also 24 pixels. And so let me just add this class so that we can start seeing some results. I'm going to remove the 7 for now. So the size is correct. Next we need to, we can remove the border and the background color. On the background itself we need to set to an image, assets, and this one is additional tweet, add tweet. Just wrap this in string, and again we don't want it to repeat, but we can't see it because we need to say background size contain. There we go. Now we have our additional tweet button. And the last button we need is the primary button. That is the blue button to the right, and that's the button you hit. Oops, I accidentally clicked on that. That's the button you hit when you want to tell the world about your new tweet. So compose tweet form additional tweet button. No, we don't want to call this additional tweet button. We can call this primary button. And for now, we can just set the border radius on this. Border radius to, let's try 24 pixels. And nothing happened. Guess why? We didn't actually assign the CSS class to the element itself. Let's do that, save. And nothing happened. Why is nothing working? Border radius 24x. Yeah, 24x is not a correct unit of measurement. It's 24 pixels. There we go. Okay, I think that radius is fine. I just think we need to add some more padding to get it looking exactly like the reference image. So top, maybe guessing here, 6 pixels, and to the right maybe double that to 12 pixels. So this is the shorthand. So we do, it goes top, right, and then bottom again, and then left. But you can also omit the last two, and then it'll just repeat again 6 pixels for the, so it'll go 6 pixels top, right, 12 pixels to the right, and then it'll just repeat 6 pixels bottom, 12 pixels to the left. I think that looks not too bad. We can adjust later if we think we need to, and we can remove the border on this for now. So it's just a clean button like that. Okay, I think this is a good place for now. So we can now start adjusting font sizes and adding the colors. Currently our colors are not correct. Our colors are just the default colors. So let's start with that. Before we start, we need the actual color codes. I don't know them off heart. So I created a reference for this, and let's call reference color. And we can resize this a bit because it's too small, I think. Let's do, I'm going to do it until it clips the width of this. Yeah, I think that's fine. We just see, there we go. Okay, so that fits in, and I hope you can see the color codes on here. And so the first one we need to set is, I'm going to start from the top again, is the text box itself. Compose tweet form text box. And for that we can set the color to the color code, and that is 536471. Right? Let's save that. Let's see if that worked. Inspect. Let's see what the color is, and our color did work. In fact, work. Let's check it off. It's very subtle. You probably can't see the difference, but I'm pretty sure designer watching will see it. But it doesn't seem like it is actually. Hold on, let me just make this red to see. Not actually working. Why is it? Oh, that's the placeholder text. My bad. Yeah, the placeholder text is not affected by your color. So let's undo this. So that's over. Okay, so color is working. And next color that we need is the color for the text of the permission. Oh wait, while we're busy here, we can update the font size of this text box as well. Font size, I think 24 pixels. Ooh, that might be too large. 22 pixels. I'm going to leave it at 20. We're going to set the font family a bit later, and as soon as we set the font family to the correct font family, we might have to adjust the font size again. So I'm going to leave it at 20 pixels. So let's go down to the permission button. So that is color. We can set the color again there to hash. Oh, this is the hex color value 1D98F0. There we go. And we need to set the font weight, because currently the font weight is just the default, which is 400, and we can set the font weight to 700, which is bold, and that looks like the reference image a bit better every time we make these small adjustments. Okay, next is the border or the lines color. Let's do that, and if I remember correctly, it uses color to set the color and not background color. We will find out soon enough though. This one is EFF3F4. And did the color actually change? Oh, I think we need to set the border style to, I think by default is inset, but we want it to be solid. There we go. And I do think our color is working. I'm going to change this to red to verify. Yeah, the color is working as expected. So that's good. What is next? So the other colors are all fine. They are using the colors of the image itself. And we can, I think, oh, let's do the spacer between the character count, this one over here, the character count and the additional tweet button. So the border right was black, so we can change this to be 89CAD3. Let's just check that again. Oh, B. I think that should be a B. B9CAD3. Yep. There we go. Change that back to black. See? Yeah, that's working. Great. Next is the primary button to the right. And let's do, so for this we need to set the background color, not the color. Background color, and that is 1D98F0, I think. Yep. And we also need to set the color to white, so that we can do hash and then 6F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I think the font weight also needs to be 700. Ooh, I think that's too much, maybe 500. So I think 400 and 500 might be the same if we don't use custom fonts. I might be wrong. This might just be because we're using the wrong font. Okay, we'll fix that later. I think the padding is off. Let's add some more. Let's do 8 and 16 rather. There we go. One thing I noticed is our items aren't all aligned vertically. They're all like not aligned. So let's see. We have the form footer and we have the form actions. So let's start with the form footer. I think we do have display flex on that. Yeah. So we can set align items. Let's see if this makes a change. Okay, so the icons on the left did change. So I'm going to comment this out and save so you can see it'll jump back up again. Yeah. So that does align those, but we also need to set it on. Let's see the actual primary actions as well. Align item center. That moves that down. And I just want to see. I think that looks a lot better. Yeah, that's good. I think one last thing we can adjust regarding, or two last things we can adjust in regards to margin or the spacing. The first one is the text box at the top. So if you look at, I'm going to switch back to just the reference image and not the color. Just update this. And I'm just going to switch this back to 200. Let's make this 250. Make it go wider. 230. Okay. If you look at the what's happening text, it's almost like it's in the middle of the profile image, where ours is currently at the top. We can't fix that with just using the align items that we just used. We will have to push the text box down a bit. So what we can do with that is so currently you'll see the border runs there at the top. So we can add margin top to this one. 12 pixels maybe. Let's see. So yes, that pushes it down a bit more there. I think that's good. So you can either add the margin top there, or on your form itself you can add some padding to the top. 12 pixels. So we should have the same effect. So no more margin on this one, only margin bottom, but if you look at the form, we have the green at the top, which is the padding. So I think that looks great. And I said there were two things. One other thing is, if you look at the reference image, the text is aligned with the icon of the earth, and then the button, this button should also be aligned with that. But the vertical line, the spacer, is a bit pulled out to the left. So we need to fix that as well. So again, there's multiple ways we can do that. The easier or the quickest way to do it as we have set up our stuff now is just to add a margin, a negative margin to the line. Let's do I think 6 pixels maybe. Minus, sorry, negative. Might need to do 12. I'm gonna let's double that. Even more. Maybe 618 is the golden number here. Yeah. So another way you can do it is you'll have to add margin to the individual components except for the line. So you'll have to add a margin on the text box, you'll have to add a margin left on the button itself, skip the margin on the vertical line or the horizontal line, and add the margin to this container to the left. You can do that as well. So I think visually it all looks pretty close to the one at the bottom. What we can do next is add some nice transitions. So currently we don't have any transitions. We have these active borders, like the black borders that you can visually see which element it has focus as I hit the tab button, but we can customize that. Let's do that. So let's start with, so I'm going to ignore, okay, before we get that started, we need another reference image. I created one for the focus states, and we can change this again to 80, I think, 90, 300, not 3,300. Okay, 310. So we can add the same color to, or the same border to the text box than we have on that button, just for consistency. Let's go to form line permission text box. Here we go. So we don't have any border on here. So you can see we have border none. So you're probably wondering, where's this border coming from? And that's not the border. That is, as far as I know, that is the outline. So let's do outline none. We probably might have to override it for. There we go. So now it's off. So we're going to keep it on, but we can set the outline color to this color at the bottom. This one over here, bottom left. So that is 8 E C D. Oh, wait, I can't see that far. I'm gonna zoom in a bit here. 8 E C D F 8. Okay. Great. So zoom back in a bit. There we go. So now we can see what is selected or what has focus. So we can see now that if we have focus, the outline is right against the text almost. So we can add some padding onto this. Padding. We can maybe do 6 pixels all around. There we go. But now alignment might be a little bit off, but we also will have to adjust these ones in to align with the actual text. If that is what you want, if you want it aligned with the text, you'd have to move this. You'd have to add the same padding to that button over there. But we can adjust that afterwards if you want. So let's move on to the everyone can reply button, the permission button. So by default, you'll see the borders aren't as round as in the reference image, so we can update that. Border radius, and let's make that, I think 24 pixels might be too much, but let's see. I think that might be okay. And we also need to add some padding onto this. So the top I would make 4 pixels, and the rest, or left and right, I would make 8 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. I think that looks good. Oh wait, and then we had that already, so we need okay, so we actually need to move the globe icon to the left as well. So let's see, so we have background size, no repeat, and let's do background position. So I can't remember which is first, X or Y, but we can do background position X first, or just set that, and then we can move this over 16 pixels. So we moved the icon 16 pixels to the right. I think that's way too much, so we can do 8. And the padding left we can put here at the bottom as I'm just going to remove the padding left here. So we need to add more padding. Maybe 32 perhaps. Now the padding on the right is too much. We'll fix that. Let's do, come on, 36. think we need to move this over some more. Get this 12, 38. Yeah, I think this padding might need to be 8 or 6. Use 6, and then I'm going to set the background size to 24 pixels, 24 pixels. And now the image is centered in our button. I think we can move. Let's move. What can we move? I think we need to move this. I know that's the top. Make this 40, 42. I think that might be the right size spacing. Okay, so then we'll just have to repeat this again. So on the right, we don't want that much padding. So we can set that maybe to 16, 6 pixels bottom, and then the left has, oops. Yeah, I think that is good. More or less. We can increase the right if we want, maybe to 20 pixels. Yeah. Okay. Next thing is we want to set the outline. That's the same as what we did for the text box. So we can copy that. Outline color. Sorry. And now we have an outline color. But we would also like to set the background color to a different color. Let's do that. So the problem is we can't set the background color on the base CSS class, otherwise we will override the image. Or you can set an image or background color with an image, but then it'll always be that color. We only want it to be that color when the element is in the focus state. So let's update. So let's update this button, or let's add a CSS selector, and that will be, I forget if it's active or focus. We'll find out in a couple of seconds. Background color, and that background color is this one over here, E8 F5D, I think. No, let me just zoom in. E8 F5FD. I missed the F. So I think it might be focus instead of active. There we go. So if we tab into it, we can now see we have a nice transition. But I think we can do a little bit better. So the transition is very instant. We can transition that we can transition that change. So it's not like an immediate change. So we can set transition, and then we can say background color 1 second, and we want to do is ease in. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to change it to red just to make it very clear what's happening here. So very slowly, well, within 1 second, the color transitions. But we can change this to be 3 milliseconds. Okay, that's too quick. Of course, that's too quick. Could do 60 milliseconds. Let's do 300 milliseconds. And let's change this back to the color. That is hash EHF5FD. Right. So now you get that nice effect. We can also play around with adding extra transitions or extra properties that needs to transition. So currently only the background color is transitioning. I think we can also set the, hold on, border radius. Let's see if that works. No, I think I just broke it. Oh, I can't the shorthand take multiple. Let's see, no. I'm going to change this again to 1. So this is 1 second. Nope. Let's do transi. Property. I'm just gonna have to Google this. Indian transition. Multiple properties. I was very close. Let's try, see. I think we need to set border radius to 0 over here and over there on the focus state. So now it changes the border radius in a transition. Okay, so let's change this to be 300 seconds again, milliseconds, not seconds. We can maybe update this to be, you already have a border radius, so it's not as, oops, pixels. And this is only needed if you really want to edit. I think it adds just a little bit of animation to your page, which is cool. Maybe 10 pixels. Yeah, I like that effect. Maybe that's a bit too much. Let's just do it at 12 pixels. Okay. I think I can stop there, otherwise I'm going to continue for the entire video. Let's move on to the individual buttons at the bottom. They have a similar focus or similar state, the footer buttons. So I'm just going to copy that and tweet form actions. So I'm going to reuse this. So this is going to be compose tweet form actions, target all elements that's directly nested in that element, and we want focus state. Okay, so that worked. So we now have the focus. If I go through the elements at the bottom, we can see that they are focusing, or the outline color is being set properly. But I do want those to be a large circle instead. So let's update these form actions. So let's add some padding to these. Let's start with 8 pixels and see how that looks like. Oh, that didn't do anything. Let's try 16. Oh, okay. I know what's wrong. The images are growing to fill the entire element size, because we have background size contain. So we've repeated ourselves here a couple of times. So what we can do is we can set the background size here, if I can spell, background size, and we'll have to set this to 24 pixels, and we will have to remove it from these ones. There we go. But now we have another problem, and that is, because I set background size over here, we are using the shorthand on the individual elements, so the shorthand is overriding this a bit. So instead of using the shorthand, we can just use background. I think it's background image, and just URL, and save that. And then on here we need to say background repeat, no repeat, and the background color, I think this needs to be transparent. There we go. And now we have that padding that we needed, but it's a bit off-centered. So background size, we can also set the background position to center. And now it should be centered. There we go. And we also, so we can update that there. Now we need to just update it on all of these. So what we can do is, I'm just going to do Alt, or if you're on a Mac, it's Option and select, and then I can type on multiple lines at once. And we can take that out, and take that out as well. And this one, hit save. Let's see. Oh, I missed one. Last one. And that should be background. There's image. Okay. So now we have these little icon, all these outlines as soon as we have focus, but we don't have any background image. So let's set the background color, or we don't have any background color, not background image. And that background color is going to be the same as what we used for this button over here. And let's set the border radius to 50%, because we want this to be a circular button. So we might need to increase the padding now, because we have the rounded corner. Let's do 32 pixels. to zoom out. Oops. Compose, tweet, form, actions, padding. Apparently, I made it too big. Yeah, don't double it. So it was 16. Let's do 18. I'm gonna zoom out a bit, give it more space. So I'm just tabbing through them with my keyboard. Okay, so let's add that same transition that we have over here. To down here. And if we don't want that border radius to be, we can do the same way we have the default of the border radius. Maybe 20%. Try 30. Also do 40 and see what that looks like. So yeah, 40 doesn't look bad. You can play around with it if you want a different effect. Let's move on to... Oh, we need to do the same for the button at the additional tweet button. So let's do that. So what we can do is we can copy this. I'm gonna move this down here and let's see. So I want to copy and paste this. See if that gives us something for by default. Okay, so now we do get that by default, which is great. Let me just set the border radius to 30 on this one maybe. I think we might need 40 as well over here. Okay, and then the last one is the tweet button, and that doesn't have any special. It does have an outline, so let's do that as well. What I wanted to say is we don't have any transitions on the outline, like the border, focus, and background color for this one is, I have to zoom in, 1A8 CD8. Okay, let's zoom back out again. So the background color does change, and we need to change the outline as well. So the outline, color is 8F, no, 8E CD F8. There we go. And we can also add some transition to that, so it's not as immediate. But for this one, we only need background color. We don't need the border radius. Great stuff. Next, what we can do is we can update the font to use the same font as what they use on Twitter. So I'm just going to change this back to the reference. Let's set this back to 280. Okay, one last thing that I want to show you is how to set the font family to be similar to what the font family is on Twitter. So first we need to add a custom font, and we can do that by using the font face keyword. And then we want to specify font family. So this will be the name that we are going to refer, or this is the name of the font we're going to use to refer to or reference later on in our CSS. So for this, I'm going to call this Twitter Chirp, and that's what they also call it, Twitter Chirp. And we have to set the source of this, and it's the same. Let's do, so this is HTTPS, and that is in ABS dot and no, I don't know this off heart. I am typing it off my notes. Chirp. I'm just trying to check if this is correct. abs3.com/fonts v2 chirp regular dash web. Okay, and then we need to add a second one for, we need to tell it what the format is first, and this format is this is WAF, and next one is going to copy that, and this one is URL. WAF2, and we need to set the font family of the font weight, sorry, to 400. So this is the default font size. And I'm just going to copy that to do, instead of regular, we do bold. Did this one bold, and this now becomes 700. Then what we can do is we can do body. So I'm doing body star, and that is to add the font family to the text area as well, otherwise it will not work. And now we can do Twitter Chirp, and the font weight is 400. Let's see if that works. Let's see what this rendered font is. This doesn't seem, not sure if that's the correct one. Text area, computed font, and it's a network resource. Let's go down here, potential. So it seems like it worked. We have the correct font, and so that's the end of this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, I will see you in the next one, and I hope you learned something.